Well, hello folks, and welcome to the Dieter Melhorn Fishing Podcast. I hope you're having a good day, whatever day it is that you happen to be listening to the show or watching it on YouTube. If you're listening, well, you're going to hear a jet in the background, and that's because, well, if you're watching it, you'll know that I'm actually taping this while I'm out on the boat. This is actually a quick little trip I'm doing. Thanksgiving morning is the day that this is being taped. So to give you a little perspective on when this is taking place and all. I'm out here fishing, dragging some baits, and just got them in the water. This will be part of a complete video that will air at some point here later this year. But gonna do a quick little podcast and go over kind of what's going on here with the weather today and going forward to what it's going to mean for some of you guys fishing. This is our first real cold snap of the year. We had a front that is coming through this morning. As you can see, it's cloudy. It rained. We had some rain. I was up this morning about 2 o'clock to see what was going on with the radar. Poof, it was raining. So, kind of letting that pass through. Didn't really want to get out in it while it's pouring down. Front came through before daylight, got out here right at daylight, and I'm fishing. So we're on the back side of it. Rain's dropped off. The winds come in. As y'all know, with a lot of these winter fronts, backsides you've got wind. I'm kind of sheltered from it right here where I'm fishing, but they're calling for 15 to 20 today sustained with gusts up around 30. So typical post-frontal weather that we've got. Coming with it is some cold air, the coldest air of the winter so far for us. So I say winter, technically we're still in fall for a few more days, but it's the coldest weather of the season so far. So up to this point, we have had relatively warm water temperatures that have been up in the 60s, lower 60s. We had a few cool nights, but we've had days where it got back warm. You know, yesterday it was like 34. I did a guide trip, and then poof, it was back up into the 60s. So it hasn't been, we haven't had the low overnight temperatures and then the low midday temperatures. That daily mean, which is kind of the average in between there, has stayed relatively high, and that's kept the water temperatures high. So, but what's happening now, and the whole point of this podcast is to talk about the cold. I think we are shifting into a cold trend, which is going to give us at least seasonably cooler temperatures, and talk a little bit about what that means fishing wise, especially for catfish. This year's been a weird year in a lot of places. Let me start by saying that any of the places along the East Coast, the Tennessee River drainages, anything east of the mountains that drains into the Atlantic side, because of Hurricane Helene, it did something to the bite. It changed something up this year, and there have been a lot of bad days of fishing. There have been some good days in there. There's still been some fish caught, but overall it hasn't been the typical good fall fishing that we get. So I say all that to say, who knows what's going to happen. But traditionally, what starts to happen, this is the time when these water temperatures start to drop, that the bite typically will start to slow down. It's going to get harder to catch fish. And, you know, you kind of just need to keep that in mind. It's not going to be like spring. There'll be good days. There'll be days where, you know, you'll have a really good bite, but generally speaking, you're not going to get the numbers you were getting early in the year. So first and foremost, just wrap your head around that and get okay with that. With that said, big fish still have to eat. Fish still have to eat in general. The big fish still have to eat. It becomes an excellent time to catch bigger fish. The key is going to be patience and being willing to put the time on the water and spend the time out on the water to be there when they do feed. It can take a while. Some of my biggest fish, if you follow the channel, have come in December. In some of the cooler temperatures, colder temperatures, most of all during some of the worst bite conditions that we have, when it's some of the slowest fishing that we have in the winter. And I'm talking days where you're getting maybe 2 or 3 bites in a trip, maybe catching 1 or 2 fish. Biggest fish last year, biggest fish out of this reservoir that I've caught around 63 pounds, was on a day where I caught 2 fish. Now the 2 that I caught was that one and one that was 40 pounds, but other than that, it was very, very slow. So it's something to keep in mind if you're going to venture out. Now granted, not everybody's going to be able to do it. You know, there's going to be places, you guys that start to go north, you're going to have ice on the water. Unless you're into ice fishing, you're not going to be able to get out, and that's just understandable. But I'm talking for the majority of people in catfish country that are going to be able to get out into places where they can fish. Things are shifting now. So, you know, we've talked about this before. The common misconception is that the only place you're going to catch them is in deep water all winter. That's not true. Not that they won't be there, not that you can't catch a fish there, but it's not always the best place to catch a fish. And a lot of that is driven by water temperatures, and most of all where the bait fish are. The bait fish are going to dictate, that food source is going to dictate where they're at. Comfort is really the last thing on a fish's mind when it picks where it's going to go. I've said this before. The number one thing they got to have is oxygen. That's number one. They got to have oxygenated water, dissolved oxygen in the water. That will dictate where they go first and foremost. After that, it's going to be food. Where's the food at? We got plenty of oxygen. We can live. Where is the food at? That's going to be the next thing. And then after that, it's going to fall into the comfort zone. Where is stuff the most comfortable? Sometimes it's deep, sometimes it's mid-water column, sometimes it's shallow. You know, that's one thing in the wintertime. Depending on what's going on weather-wise, you start getting some warm days with a lot of sunlight. Depending on the clarity of water, and you get some light penetration. That shallower water can heat up, and it can pull bait fish in there, and it can pull bigger fish in. So all stuff to keep in mind. One thing I suggest, if you're trying to fish in colder water, to see that you catch fish first and foremost, is to downsize your baits. You know, this gets, you know, people are going to say, well, you said you use big baits. Well, a lot of times when I am fishing for larger fish, that is what I will do to basically just get more scent dispersion out there, if nothing else. I feel like the bigger fish that eat, probably in the wintertime, and this is just all, you know, our own little theories and ideas on stuff, is that if they're going to eat big, so they don't have to spend a whole bunch of energy looking for a whole lot of little stuff. So I'll go with the bigger bait. But with that said, if you're just trying to catch fish, I think downsizing baits can help in the wintertime. There does seem to be a time period, early part of winter, where, you know, the time we're in now, where some of these bigger baits seem to be more appealing. And but my suggestion is always this: if you're able to fish with multiple rods, not everybody's able to do that. We're able to do that here where I'm fishing. I've got 6 rods out. I've got, you know, half of them with big baits, half of them with small baits, all cut bait today, by the way. And, you know, if you can mix it up some. You know, if you're just if you got a lot of little fish, you're one of those people that's very lucky and you got nothing but a whole bunch of little fish eating all day long, then go with the bigger baits just to eliminate them. But, you know, if you're like most people and the pickings are slim, downsize your bait first and foremost. See if you can catch some fish to at least make the time out there enjoyable, and then you can upsize the bait to eliminate fish. Because listen, guys, there's nothing more miserable than being out here in the cold, maybe in the snow, maybe in a cold rain, on a windy day, and you're not catching fish. So, you know, first and foremost, catch some fish. Probably if you're watching this video, listening to this podcast, you're like figuring out how to just catch some fish. Try to catch some fish first. Downsizing your bait is going to be the best way to do that. With that said, some of the biggest fish I've ever caught have come on the smaller baits. As a matter of fact, the past few days, I think we had one good fish. We had one yesterday that was around 26 pounds that actually hit a large perch head. The rest of them have hit the smaller baits that we've had out. So it doesn't, you know, I don't know what it is with the science of what they're eating and why they choose big or small. You know, I think sometimes if they're just not active, maybe full, I don't know. I don't know which one they pick which time. I like to put the mix out there just so there's a variety. Some of you guys gonna ask what bait. I think anything you can get your hands on. We've had the past few trips, we've done the mix of cut bait, fresh cut bait from this water, and chicken. And I think yesterday it was 6-1 chicken over fresh cut bait. I think chicken will work. I think it'll depend where you're fishing. I think if you're fishing in an area that has mussels and fish are feeding on mussels, I think the chicken will work. You know, but I do like the cut bait in the wintertime. I like cut bait anytime. It just, again, depends on what kind of fish you're trying to catch, what you're trying to target. Bluegill, if you can get your hands on those, they're harder to catch in the wintertime. Bluegill, great bait. Obviously shad probably, if you can throw a cast net, probably, you know, one of your better baits to use. And then depending where you're at regionally, you know, if you have skipjack can be one that you can catch in the winter. You know, get your hands on those. And if you're able to use any of the game fish, I know in Tennessee you can use white bass, great bait, can't beat them. You know, crappie, depending on which state you're in as to what they're going to call them. They're an excellent bait. I'm using crappie today. I'm fishing in North Carolina. It's legal to use them here as long as they meet the length and creel limits, and we catch them on rod and reel, which I caught these on rod and reel yesterday on a trip while we were trying to catch perch. So they're legal to use. Check your local laws. It's going to change everywhere. Some places can't use any game fish, not even bluegill. So make sure those are legal. But I say all that to say, any of the baits will work. The one thing I'd stay away from, stink baits. Stink baits, not a good time for it. It seems like the lower the temperatures get, the less scent dispersion you get with the stink bait. So, you know, you guys that are in a boat, obviously covering water, being able to cover water, I think helps. You know, drifting, dragging, trolling, I think that helps with finding fish. You guys on the banks, a different story. If you've got those places that have access to deep and shallow water from the same place, you're primo. You know, if you're fishing a park or someplace like that that has a point, a lot of times these points will go out. The tops of the points will be relatively shallow. It may drop off on the side. Those kind of places for bank fishing, especially if you have public access, bank fishing are places to look at. You know, check your topo maps. Get your Navionics app online. You can look at these places you're planning to bank fish from, look at the maps and see what it is doing out there offshore from where you're fishing. That's one thing as a bank fisherman. You need to be a little bit of a computer nerd, I think, to figure out what's going on, because it's very hard to tell when you're sitting on the bank as to what's going on out there. You know, you think it all just goes out deeper and deeper and deeper. There's some places you'll pull into and it may be 3 feet deep for 200 yards. So it can deceive you. Look at your topo maps, look at your Navionics, look at some of the other mapping out there and see what's going on. The other thing is get used to seeing how quick that sinker falls. You know, depending on the size weight, you can play around with it in a known depth, drop a sinker, see how long it takes to hit the bottom. You know, some of them will fall a foot a second, 2 feet a second, 3 feet a second. You can figure that out. It's not 100%, but if you cast it out there and it sinks, it's pretty deep water. You throw it out there and it hits the water, boom, it's on the bottom, you're in shallow water. So pay attention to that sink rate, kind of know it for different weights and different size sinkers as far as the shape will fall at a different rate. It'll give you a good ballpark on how deep your water is. So little nuggets to keep in mind. Guys, another thing is, if you're going this time of the year, dress warm, especially when it starts to really get cold and stay cold. Nothing worse than being miserable out there on the water. I can tell you that. And the great equalizer this time of the year in catching fish is going to be out there a while, a long time, gutting it out. And whether you're using, you know, just multiple layers like I do. I've got a thermal base layer on here. I think this is some Under Armour stuff. And then I've got one of these hoodies on that is wind resistant. I need to do a video on these things. They're not a sponsor. Were not given to me. I found them actually at Walmart of all places, but it's got the Mossy Oak logo on it. I don't think they make it. I think they just license out their brand to it, but it's wind resistant. It's got a neck gaiter mask that pulls up over your head built in, a zipper pocket, and it's wind resistant. Wind is not penetrated, and it's got a fleece inside on it. Again, they're not a sponsor. This is just good stuff. This is the kind of stuff you need. And then if you've got, you know, a good outer shell, bring it. I've got a Grundon suit over here, the Grundon Score-Tex suit. They are a sponsor of the channel, and that is very good stuff that cuts the wind on the outside. But you can see what I'm wearing today. I don't even have the Grundon suit on. I've just got this on. So it's, you know, make sure you're dressed for the cold. Take some hand warmers. They also make some of the electric stuff. You've seen me test out these electric heated gloves. They work. Put the heat setting on low though. That's my tip on any of the battery powered stuff, because there's nothing worse than being out there fishing all day and those things die on you. So yeah, keep that in mind. But it can be a good time to get out here. Some people still want to fish. Most people don't. I mean, you know, the truth is most people are, you know, they want to stay inside, and I understand that. But there's a few dumb ones like myself that we go at it pretty hard all winter. So it's just some ideas, some stuff to think about for you. And, you know, oh, one thing, if you are in a boat and you are moving, slow everything down. Because you can't go too slow in the wintertime is what it comes down to. You've got fish that are not active, maybe not feeding, lethargic. It's a good time to really, really slow down your boat speed as much as possible to give those lethargic fish a chance to bite and take your bait. So another thing to keep in mind. A tip I forgot to give you. So anyway, that's it for now. If you get out and you get fishing, I hope you catch some. And until next time, we'll catch you out on the water.